I have a minute after 6. With that, I'll call the meeting of the November 14th Select Board to order. And first item of business is our Pledge of Allegiance. And Dick, if you would lead us on that, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item of business is the approval of minutes. And the first item is the minutes of the October 24th work session.
We approve them as read. Second.
It's been moved by Charles and seconded by Mike that we approve the minutes of the October 24th work session as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. They are approved. The next item of business is a review of the minutes for the non-public work session. Excuse me, the October 24th Board of Selectmen minutes.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mike and seconded by Dick that the minutes of the October 24th Board of Selectmen's meeting be approved as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. They are approved. And lastly, we have the non-public minutes of October 24th meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
I move to approve them as presented. Second.
It's been moved by Mike and seconded by Charlie that the minutes of the non-public session of the Board of Selectmen for October 24th be approved as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. They are approved. Announcements. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Regular meetings, 6 p.m., Monday, November 28, 2011, and December 12, 2011. Work review sessions prior to the regular meeting will start at 5 p.m. All of the above meetings will be held in Town Hall unless otherwise posted. Weather observations for the month of October are available in the Town Hall. A citizen, and I'll insert this, is still needed to represent the town of Plymouth at the Genesis Behavioral Health meetings. If you have any interest in that, please get in touch with the town administrator. All town hall offices will be closed on November 24th and 25th in the observation of Thanksgiving holiday. There will be a budget work session meeting on Monday, November 21st at 5:30 p.m.
It
And as already stated, that will be here at Town Hall. And the paperwork that you may have handed out signifies that's 5, but it is indeed 5:30 p.m. The 2011 annual Christmas parade will take place on Saturday, December 3rd at 5 p.m. Agenda review. Are there any further changes that are needed in the agenda for this evening? Hearing none. Our next item of business, I'm going to turn over to Dick, in which we recognize someone for their valuable service. Dick?
Is Robin here? Come on up. How are you? Good. Robin served on the zoning board when I was chairman and Mike was also on. And we just want to present her with this plaque for her dedication and service. I ripped the bag, sorry. There you go. Let me read a letter from the board. Dear Robin, it is with sincere regret that the Board of Selectmen accepts your resignation from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Your service to the Plymouth ZBA over the last 3 years has been much appreciated. particularly in light of the numerous complex cases which occurred during your tenure. The board recognizes the volunteer efforts of Plymouth citizens serving on municipal boards greatly reinforces the community fabric which binds us together. We will be hard-pressed to replace you. Now we just add that I've said for a long, long time that being on the zoning board is maybe one of the most thankless and difficult boards to be on, because no matter what happens, someone leaves unhappy at the end of the night. So we appreciate your dedication and service, and thank you very much.
Okay, we need to get you in the picture there.
I hate to be bossy, but let's not lose the moment. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, guys. Okay.
Nice smile.
Can I go now?
Even though you did well, no. Moving along, the next item that needs attention is one under the subject of updates, and it's in regards to the Time Warner cable update. I'll turn to Charlie for that.
We had a meeting last week with the Ashland, Wilderness, and PSU. The major issue at this point is to get the survey completed. We're talking about the possibility of sending it out with the tax bills in Plymouth. Wilderness has sent it out on an email. They email all of their citizens, and Ashland has about completed theirs. I think we'll probably be into the public hearing by the end of this month or early December. But the survey's got to be completed first. Other than that, we're moving right along. The contracts all will be negotiated. We're trying to negotiate all 3 contracts for termination at the same time, which would be 2013 for all 3 towns. And for Plymouth, there are other issues, but their contract is a separate agreement, but the town is involved because their access to the internet or to the cable is through, it's over the Time Warner lines that go through town roads. There are no university streets. So basically, the franchise fee is the issue. We'll probably meet in another couple of weeks, and by the end of December, we'll be ready to go into negotiations with Time Warner. That's it.
Just one issue. I had inquired in another municipality about sending something out with the tax bills, and as best as I can remember, the answer was that tax bills are one of the things that a city or town sends out where you cannot do an insert.
We talked to the tax collector, and she had an RSA that said we can use.
Oh, really? Okay.
Use it as a vehicle.
Okay.
We haven't decided yet because we've got to draw up the survey. We haven't set the tax rate, so.
Yeah.
Any feeling on how things are going with the survey?
No, I think the survey, for the most part, is cursory. It's the attorneys gave us a list of things that we should ask. There are some specific issues in each town. In Plymouth, it's well, all 3 towns. One of the major issues is the connection to the Burlington station as opposed to Boston. I think it's Channel 7. That is something that the feds establish as the market that we're in, but it can be changed through a petition by Time Warner. So we'll have to work out something with them to go after the feds to change our access. And that would probably not happen until right before the contract goes into effect, the new agreement.
How long will the survey be open for people to complete?
I think it's the end of this month.
November 28th.
November 20th?
I just want to remind people that a survey is on the website, and we have been getting a lot of response from the website. So if people continue to go to the website, the survey's right on the first page of our website. You can click on it right there.
Anything else for Charlie?
No, that's it.
The next item of business is any new updates in regards to the safety buildings initiative that we're still pursuing. I'll offer a summation of the non-public work session that we just concluded, and I appreciate all of you who were early arrivals waiting outside while we were doing that. But the Select Board did meet with the architect, and we continued to work several scenarios in regards to properties and looking at the possibilities of firming up the master plan for a couple of those scenarios. And the follow-on is that we will have the architect back, and we're also going to be engaging at the work session that we've got coming up on the 21st, since it deals with financial matters. We'll have the police chiefs back to work with the Select Board in regards to some of the particulars coming out of last year's town meeting. We were asked to take a look at all of the square footage requirements regardless of where buildings might be located. So we continue to work that because we are dealing with various properties. Of course, we need to keep that information confidential. So it is still being pursued. Under Chairman's comments, I have two. First, because we are getting inquiries, as you might anticipate, regarding the tax rate for the town. The Town Administration Office just received from the auditors this past Thursday the information that we had to send to the Department of Revenue Administration to figure our tax rate. We should have a date shortly and a rate shortly about what that rate is going to look like. And as soon as it is in, we'll make sure an announcement goes out. So it's pending and it's imminent. We don't have information yet to be able to share with you. The second item, we wish to express the appreciation of all of those who attended the Veterans Day celebration that occurred at 10:30 outside in front of Town Hall this past Friday. We did have a fair number of people who did attend, and it was appreciated. We also are very much aware of the communication that was in the letters to the editor expressing concern about the fact that we didn't have a parade. We think it's important that two messages associated with that are conveyed to the citizens of the town. The first, the administration did engage VFW and the American Legion in discussions on what should take place, and it was the consensus of all three of those groups, including the town administration, that the best thing to do this year was to have that celebration in front of Town Hall. So that was not undertaken lightly, and we did recognize the strong need to be able to recognize the service that our veterans have given us over the years. And lastly, if the information that you maybe find on the town's website doesn't give you the level of detail that you'd like to have, please pick up the phone and call the town office. Seek that additional explanation. What I shared with you tonight could have been passed on earlier when we had those type of concerns about what's going on behind the decision to not have a parade. So again, thank you to all of those who showed up. We had a fairly good crowd. I was impressed by those people who were able in the military to keep their hats on with that wind that we had blowing. It was brisk.
And the middle school band was amazing.
They did good. It was nice to see the kids, especially in an event like that. The approved purchase orders, we don't have anything in front of us. We don't have any new ones. Permit request. We do have a request, and I'm assuming, Dick, you've already seen that?
Yep.
We have approved a permit for the annual Christmas parade that you heard me mention earlier for the 3rd. So we have taken action on that already. Under committee reports, I'll start to my left and ask if there's anything that Dick wants to share with us on any of his committee assignments.
I missed the last planning board meeting, so no, I do not have anything.
And I believe I attended the last Plymouth Energy Commission meeting, but they're all here to talk about what we talked about, so we'll leave it to them.
I did attend the last planning board work session, and it was, to me, an interesting one and somewhat fruitful toward the end. we were struggling to understand on both sides of the issue around the drainage problems, and I'm going to use Page Street as the center of the discussion. It obviously involves a number of other properties around Page Street and some of the developments that have recently been approved in that vicinity. But we came to understand that in the particular case of one property owner further down on Fairgrounds Road, that the flooding that we were hearing concerns being expressed about was somewhat of a recent phenomenon that had only begun to occur, and I'm going to date it around 2005. That may not be accurate, it may be 1 year on one side or the other there. But it took us a while to get to that, and as a result of that, we're going to be doing a site visit out there to make sure we understand all of the work that has been approved dating back to 2004 with the approval of the major facilities, Mountain View Estates out there, and then most recently the workforce housing. Because we did get to an understanding, I would characterize it as a productive meeting, but it took us a good hour to get to that point. And we are following up with a site visit. The only other thing that I will mention is that there will be information that's going to be left downstairs in the front of the administration's office. We do have the annual Chamber of Commerce auction sale that's going to be occurring, and there's information that's going to be available in the front of the town hall that gives you all of the details behind that. It is a very productive event for them. We get a lot of participation on that. Charlie?
I didn't attend the school board meeting because they're still on the same cycle as the select. But I think there's going to be a school board meeting tomorrow night. Somebody told me that. I don't know. I'm going to try and find out. I've been told that their next meeting they're going to discuss getting themselves into a cycle that will not conflict with the selectmen, and also the possibility of them, we're going to try to get the school board to hold their meetings in town hall for the sake of the PB Cam people, expedite it and televise it in real time. That's a discussion we'll have at their next meeting. In addition, I attended the annual Rotary penny sale, which was quite a turnout, I think, although we won't know till Wednesday. But it appears they made more money this year, slightly more than they did last year, which is a considerable improvement given the economic state of affairs. I think it's their biggest fundraiser for scholarships, that and the duck race. But we'll know Wednesday, and I believe it'll probably be in the $13,000 to $15,000 range, but I'm not sure. Other than that, nothing.
Thank you, sir. The next item is moving on to new business, and under that, the first thing in front of us is to address a warrant article to move town meeting to Saturday. I'm looking at our town administrator. Either he or I can set the stage. Would you prefer to do that, or you want me to set the stage for that? I'm on.
Not mine.
Most of you may recall that at last year's town meeting, we did get a sense of the meeting that we should move forward to explore moving the town meeting to another time frame. The select board has considered what I will use as the term an initial trial perhaps should look like for the town of Plymouth. And we are proposing that we move the town meeting to the Saturday at 7 o'clock after Election Day. Now, there's several reasons for identifying that time frame. In no particular order here. The first is that it still enables us to take care of all the requirements that we have for our financial planning and in a way that meets the state requirements for us to do that. Moving it later, as others have maybe suggested, such into May, introduces a whole new set of headaches that trying to overcome just doesn't seem like the trip's worth the fare. Secondly, by moving it to Saturday, we get it off of a weekday, and again, we're calling this a trial. We're going to see how it works out. and it allows people who are still perhaps working on a Saturday by having it at 7 o'clock to be able to attend. It perhaps helps some who need babysitters. We did hear a number of comments that having it during the weekday, people who want to come, getting a babysitter is a problem because it's a school night. So we move it off a school night. We're still exploring whether it will continue to be at the elementary school. There is a question that if we're successful in A, getting more people to come, and B, getting them further engaged, that we may have a significant number, we may overcrowd the elementary school. I recall the number correctly that I heard from our town administrator. It's around 400 and, did I hear? 450 is the requirement that the fire marshal would have for that facility. And there's been town meetings I can think of in the past where we've been close to having that.
500.
500? Thank you.
Don't quote me, but the last calculation, I believe, was right around 5 or 550, so with the bleachers and the chairs.
I'm sure they'll trust your number better than mine. So we're going to explore, another potential site, and of course, one of them that has been used in the past is the Plymouth State University Field House. So we're going to look into that. It's one of the alternatives, and we may put that out. That's still at the discussion stage, but we are going to try this to see how it works, and then we'll get feedback after that. So while we say we're moving it, it's not cast in stone. We'll see how it works for us. Anything I maybe have left out that needs to be tagged on to that?
Reckon another weekend.
The next item of business is that we actually have the report here from what's called the Streetlight Subcommittee of the Energy Commission. And somehow or another, Mr. Whitman managed to get his name tagged onto that.
I missed the meeting, Mike was at.
Is that right? We can do two things. If we want, we can maybe grab a couple of chairs, or however many of you would like to have participate, and just slide up here. Or we can have you stand at the podium.
I can stand. They want me to stand up there. They don't want to get up.
If I could ask, beginning here and also for other items of business that we have further on, to make sure we get things correct as you stand to speak, if you would introduce yourself and indicate whether or not you are indeed a resident of the town of Plymouth. It'll help us in our record keeping. Mr. Whitman.
Sure. So I'll start. Steve Whitman, Plymouth resident and chair of the Energy Commission. And what we're here for today is to enter into a conversation, hopefully with the selectmen, about how best to proceed with the lighting inventory that's been underway at the commission level. And so for those that haven't been involved, I'll provide just a little bit of background. In about 2008, it was brought to the Energy Committee, this idea of trying to get a sense of how many lights we have within the community and how many lights we're paying for, and whether or not there's an opportunity to actually reduce the number of lights that are on, street lights that are on. We started into a process of working with the co-op to actually get an updated inventory of what existed. And after a couple of years of working towards this, in January of this year, the Board of Selectmen endorsed the idea of us having a lighting subcommittee. And so Dave Warman, who's been our champion of street lighting and keeping us on the agenda at the Energy Committee level, we thank him for that. He's been kind of the chair of the subcommittee. Larry Mockley and I have joined to help with some of the work, but Dave's done most of the heavy lifting on this, and he deserves acknowledgement for that. Other towns have done this, and one of the reasons we waited in working with the co-op was to see how other towns had approached it, and the process that they used to both evaluate whether or not a streetlight should stay on or not, and then the process they used for public feedback, which is where we think we're starting to get now. When we started, we used House Bill 585, which is the New Hampshire Outdoor Lighting Efficiency Act of 2009, as kind of our baseline for how do you evaluate the need for lights and what's most critical to light. Our basic process for reviewing which lights should stay on, the criteria were an emphasis on safety, energy conservation and efficiency, reducing municipal lighting costs, and then lastly, dark sky light pollution. In order to start this whole process after becoming a subcommittee, we met with Chief Clarkston and Chief Temporino in July and just tried to get a sense from them of what their priorities were. We left that meeting with with a pretty clear message that the priority was the pedestrian-oriented downtown area, places that have sidewalks, places that have pedestrian flows. I have one of my classes is here with us tonight. It's a planning class focused on energy issues, so this was fitting. That's why I brought them along. But the chiefs pointed out that having people at different times of the night out walking, crossing the street, those are priority areas to have lights on, and that as we move out from the high-density part of town, it was less of a priority. So we entered into a process of actually going out both at night and during the day and finding each of these lights that are on the 8 pages of spreadsheet that was sent to you. We also found a number of lights that weren't on the inventory, so we were able to work with the co-op to update the inventory, which was helpful. And we've gone through a process and tried to put together a couple of different options. And as we referenced in the memo from November 3rd, the option that the Energy Commission would like to put forward for discussion would be option B. And for those of you that are listening, just let you know what that is. Option B is basically the removal of 81 streetlights and replacing 18 of the real high wattage lights in the downtown area with LED lights, something that the co-op has talked about starting to offer as an option. In summary, if some version of option B, as it stands now, were to be carried forward and be supported by the residents of the town, we're looking at annual savings eventually of $16,243, approximately. The initial savings is $12,800, and then there's an initial cost for the LED conversions. But out of the gate, the first year we could save, we feel about $8,000. We could, once the LED lights were paid off in a couple of years, we'd be up to about $16,000 for option B. We do realize that the list as it stands now is a starting point. There may be lights that the Board of Selectmen feels should be left on. There may be lights that citizens are concerned with having left on. So that's my initial summary of where we're at. I guess I'd like to just open it up to any questions that you have as a board or that Paul has. If you don't have questions, I'm going to keep talking.
I've got a number of questions. I got a number of questions, but I was looking to see others to do that. And to me, you mentioned a very key phrase, just now beginning the public discussion.
Exactly.
My research after seeing the information that you provided, attached with the spreadsheet and also the communications piece, was to reflect on it and to then begin to recognize that, in my mind, there were several questions that also needed to be spoken to. And the first is to reflect on what I am aware of, either through my research or recent experience. I was one of the architects that had to craft that RSA for 2009. The co-op was an integral part of working at the legislature for that. And one of the things that we tried to stress in working with the legislature, that the idea of what is good lighting and what is bad lighting, and I'm trying to use very simple terms here, is in the eye of the beholder.
Right.
And what we found with a number of the towns, when you come at it from a standpoint of either energy efficiency or economics or dark skies, is that very quickly you start hearing from what I call the customer. In this case, it's the citizens of the town when you're talking about roadway lighting, as to whether the light should be there or shouldn't be there, or it should be there in a different manner or fashion. So the first question I have with that kind of information in the back of my head is to verify what I believe is correct, that to this point, none of the lights that are being proposed in any of the options here, there has not been any conversations with the residents in the vicinity of where those removals would be taking place?
That's correct. As an Energy Commission, we weren't going to go there. What we wanted to do was bring it to you and follow whatever process you felt and whatever feedback loop for comments in a timeline that the board was comfortable with.
The next question that came to mind, and this is unfortunately the engineer in me, is to pose the question, what were the standards that were used to make a determination as to whether or not a light should appropriately stay or should appropriately be removed? What was the specifications that were used to make that determination?
That's a great question, and I'll ask both Dave and Larry to chime in if I miss anything. When we first went out, we tried to get a sense of why lights were in specific locations, especially as you get to more rural portions of the town. You know, were there lights over intersections sometimes? Were there lights over things like fire hydrants, which we learned isn't really a concern for the fire department because they bring their own lights, so they were sometimes. So there seemed to be this evolution of outdoor lighting in the more rural parts of the town, probably as people moved out there and requested lights. So we went street by street, working our way out from the densest part of town, where the only thing in the downtown area that we've suggested be turned off is where there's a redundant light, where there's sometimes an ornamental light was installed right underneath street light, and we're paying for both. So it's an extra lighting level. Whereas Dave went through and found some of the places that had lights on private property, lighting private property, we think at the town's cost, or an extremely high wattage light that could be reduced with an LED fixture. Those were the only changes downtown, recognizing the safety, the pedestrian safety issue. As we moved further out, there was more of a tendency to suggest that lights be turned off on more of the rural streets. And we can go through, you'll see in that handout that it's a street by light, street by street categorization. So anyone can actually find their actual street and then go to the pole and actually read the number and make sure whether that light's been turned off. It's being suggested to be turned off or left on. Other criteria that you guys want to add?
The follow-on to that then is, and you touched on it, the co-op has very recently made the determination that their standard that they're going to provide for both private and roadway lighting is to move away from the, I'll call it the late 1970s technology, the high-pressure sodium, to LED lighting. And they will begin rolling that new program out the first part of next year. As a piece of that, as they have been doing within our town and other towns over the last, I'll say, 5 years, in the past, some of the, an older fixture head would go bad, the ballast in it.
Right.
They would change the fixture out with a new dark skies fixture. What they will be doing with the LED lighting, is I'm coming to understand, and I understand the literature will be out sometime in the next few weeks to explain all the specifics. But what I understand, they'll use a similar program so that when a high-pressure fixture has a problem with the fixture, and I'm not talking about the bulb or the eye, but the fixture, the expensive part,
Right.
when that fails, and typically it's about a 15, 18 year, sometimes 20-year life, but we got a lot of lights in Plymouth that are getting close to failure. When that fails, they will replace it with an LED. And when you look at the technology that they're going to be talking about doing and the improvements in the lighting efficiency that are associated with that, reduction in wattage, plus the character of the light is going to be actually better with the dispersion and things like that. Were you able to factor any of that into some of these recommendations?
Yes, we were.
That's a big, long-winded question.
Positively. But right now, it looks like, from what I understand, for the lower wattage fixtures, the LEDs will be an increase of 22% in your monthly cost. The higher wattage fixtures is going to be a decrease of almost 40%. So the majority of the streetlights in Plymouth are these 70-watt high-pressure sodiums, and so replacing them is going to result in a 22% increase in cost.
That's because of the cost, the initial cost of the fixture.
Just rolled into that.
Yeah, and
We're proposing, you know, the lights that we're talking about shutting off are lights that, in our view, as an energy committee, are, we don't understand why they're there, actually. You know, and it's 90% of them are in the outer areas where we live also. And if you look at the list, the downtown area, like Steve was saying, the only lights that are being shut off in those areas are redundant lighting. But if you look at the proposal, as far as replacing fixtures, the only fixtures we're talking about doing is for LEDs. Like I say, the default fixture eventually is going to be the LED from the co-op. But the high immediate cost saving is going to be in the high wattage fixtures, which are all the Main Street fixtures, all downtown fixtures, all the monster fixtures, 400 watts. You're going to save instantly, even if you don't do anything else. Those fixtures should be replaced once the co-op, which is January 1st, from what I'm understanding.
I understand it's in January.
Yeah.
What I also came to understand was that I characterize the co-op, quite frankly, as an early adopter with this. You don't find anybody else in the state of New Hampshire that's doing it at the moment, and it's nice to see the co-op take that kind of energy efficiency step. But as you pointed out, Steve, because they're somewhat ahead of their curve here, the initial cost of the fixture, it still hasn't gone with mass production yet, and it is a General Electric fixture. So the cost of the fixture is up there. The beauty of it is, even with the lower wattage things, that as energy costs continue to climb, and they are going to climb, and the production cost of the fixture, at some point, the cost is going to levelize. It could be 5 or 10 years from now, even on the lower end. So the idea of focusing, like you were outlining, on some of the ones where we got the immediate savings, and you get the better lighting characteristic out of it, that tends to make a lot of sense, too.
I mean, another thought, basically, there are 3 options in the spreadsheet, and then the 4th option, as Davis said, is replace everything with LEDs, which would have an upfront cost. So we didn't put it in the spreadsheet, but it could be discussed. I guess another option would be also, as when we see to what degree people support or reject the idea of having streetlights turned off in more of the rural areas, if there are streetlights that would be kept on, see how many of those are, and maybe consider swapping those to LED as well.
Well, eventually the default fixture, which is eventually being January 1st, will be LED. It doesn't make any sense to upfront cost the 70 waters, but it does on the high pressure, I mean, on the 400 waters, because it's an immediate savings. It's considerable.
It is.
Right.
What I would offer up as I think you indicated you had A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
Offer up a scenario E for your consideration at the commission level, and it's got several aspects to it. The first is, I would think the next step would be for you guys to formally engage the safety committee, which is not only the police and the fire chiefs, but also has representatives of citizens that are on there, and to use a stepping stone approach. And I'll take what you were throwing out there. Identify 1 or 2 areas that look at different aspects of all of the town lights, and come back with a proposal in which you've also engaged the citizens or the businesses in those 2 areas, and let's do a couple of pilot programs in working with the co-op, and then take that, see how it works out with the public perception. Because one of the things that has occurred, as an example, I know you guys are aware of this also, is what went on in Conway last year and a half, in which for economic reasons they went out and essentially took out every other light in the town, and they couldn't come up with a good scheme to do it in a scientific way, so it was kind of
We've taken
hodgepodge.
all of what the other towns like Jaffrey, Conway, Northumberland done into consideration, and the Conway issue was, at the forefront of what we did.
What they ended up, though, was a significant backlash is probably too strong of a word. Kickback from a number of citizens who felt their needs around safety and security weren't addressed. So that's why I think if we take all the stuff we've done here and engage 2 constituencies on a pilot basis, so we engage the citizens in that area.
The big issue with Conway was, right off the bat, they came out and said, we're shutting half the lights off. You want that light to stay on, you have to pay for it.
Yep.
That caused a huge problem. So that's something that needs to be addressed by the Board of Selectmen, I think, as far as what the policy wants to be, because right now the town's paying for some lights out there that run. I mean, we've addressed a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of stuff downtown here that doesn't need to be there, for sure. There's a lot of stuff that does need to be there. But there's a lot of stuff in the rural areas that, no way it needs to be there, and it's going to be up to somebody to decide if that resident wants to stay there, if that light wants to stay there. Do we want to keep paying for it? Do we want to put that cost on?
It is a decision that's going to come back on this, because at some point, I haven't seen, I've only been on a year and a half on this board, and I know Charlie's been about almost 5 years now. I'm not aware of any recent requests for lights, but at some point in the past, somebody believed there was a need for a light, and they made a request to the town, and the town fulfilled that request based on the need. And we don't have any information to demonstrate what the argument was for that light. So that's why I think it's imperative that we engage whoever's in that area now, because we need to hear from them. If they don't care anymore, then we take the light out. It makes our job easier if we do that front end and engagement. if they do care, what's the argument, and should the town pay for it, or should it indeed become a private light?
Once the list goes public, I mean, there's a complete list of lightings now, and that was one of the things, at first, it was, the co-op in the town didn't have a complete inventory of lighting, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. But they certainly don't know why there's certain lights that are there that no one knows why they're there.
Right.
And so right now, the co-op, it kind of pushed us a little on it, was there was not going to be any cost to remove a light. Well, now, there's going to be a cost as an effective January 1st to remove a light. And the deal is now, is if the fixture's over 5 years old, there's not going to be a cost. Anything under that will have a cost. But,
I don't think there shouldn't be any cost to us then, because as far as I know, most of the fixtures have been there way over 5 years.
Exactly, yeah.
So there's no cost to
and
that.
so that once the thing goes public, you would think that, and hopefully the town, residents look at the list, and if that light in front of the house they wanted to stay on, they would speak up. I mean, as far as, there needs to be public input positively.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I guess the first thing that you said, Ray, about the safety committee, I think it's a great idea. It's not something that we had discussed, but meeting with the safety committee and seeing if there are additional concerns that they have would be good. My concern about the pilots is that I think to some degree every neighborhood is different, and we're going to get comments either way. And this whole idea that there may be costs applied at some point for taking the fixtures away and looking at potentially up to 81 fixtures, realizing that probably not all of them will be agreed to be shut off. I think there have been so many hours a year for the Energy Commission, and Dave specifically, and Dave's wife, that it would be nice to see some kind of public process go out to start getting this feedback from folks.
I would like to do that, but I'd like to do it in a controlled manner, and I believe that pilot is a good way to do that, and you guys can establish what the scope of that pilot looks like. I said one street. It could be a community such as the village area, or it could be the downtown, but I think we need to do that in a controlled way, just so we do engage our citizens, and because we don't have the knowledge. I agree that there's probably a fair number of lights that are, you can't imagine why they're there. But on the other hand, you're going to have with those 1, 2, 3, or half a dozen locations where there's a passion and desire
Absolutely.
to have that light there, and we need to front end that. And I'd like to see how the process is going to look like, or how we're going to front end that before we do the whole town.
As far as that pilot goes then, I think two things we need to think about are a timeline and how the process will actually be carried out. I don't know if it's in the best interest of the town for the Energy Commission to contact somebody cold and say, we're thinking about turning your light off. So whether or not there's a letter that goes out from the Board of Selectmen that we could help draft, that pulls people in, something. I just want to make sure that the process that's used doesn't create more chaos.
Well, certainly, because we are talking about some economic potentials here, the sooner we can
Absolutely.
come to a conclusion on the way to make some of these things happen, the better. How about forming the ideas of the options of how that contact process would work as you work together with the safety committee? And perhaps we could have a volunteer from one of the, actually, we already have a volunteer.
Yeah, I think we do.
Who's the representative on the safety committee? I can't recall that.
I'm not sure.
Charlie?
Am I it? I guess so.
How about so we can help speed the process along, when you have get-togethers, if you'll let Mike and Charlie know when those sessions are, that they'll make every effort to ensure one of them is there, so that we can move some of the things along, address your concerns, but how do we make this happen in a timely manner?
Okay.
And I think it's also important to point out that there's never been a review of the lighting in Plymouth. I mean, there's been lighting added, and of course the co-op, they don't care if the light's on or off. There's lights up there that I'm sure have been off for, I want to say years, because there's adjacent lighting there that nobody takes note of, and it's the co-op. They're not metered lights. There's a light there, you get charged for it. And the co-op does not go out and look around to see if lights are on, except for the daylight ones that are on because the photocells fail. But the lights that are out, they don't take note of it unless it's reported. So I know for a fact it's been years since anything's been done with the lighting. So there's going to be lights for sure that nobody cares about. So it's going to be a cost savings for sure.
Well, the timing is good to be able to get some healing on this because of the work that's going on with the budget process for next year.
And then the LED lighting, that's replacing those ones, it's an instant cost savings, an annual thing of over, $3,000. That there's money in the budget for it, for sure. So.
Does the Public Safety Committee have regular meetings, Charlie, or is it just on
As required.
And do you know who I contact?
Probably Steve Temporado.
Okay, so we can contact and get that started.
Yeah.
Just a follow-up question. So what you're saying is that there are lights that are out that we are still paying for because
Nobody reports them on.
no one
I
knows.
think too, that there was nobody knew anything about the lights in Plymouth. There was no inventory, the co-op didn't know, the town didn't know. It's $60,000 been budgeted. It's a $52,000 item. It's just been budgeted for $60 grand for the last couple of years. And now it's, from what we can tell, it's a $48,000 item. And I think it's important that even if the process gets completed here as far as the inventory, and it's a good thing it was taken, the Energy Committee took the directive to do this because nobody else was. I mean, it was kind of, I personally think it was absurd that the town didn't know, or the co-op, as far as what lights were out there.
Yeah.
We have a baseline now, which is helpful.
Yeah, well, I mentioned another reason for the thinking of this, I had lost sight of it earlier, for doing the pilot, to make sure that it's not helter-skelter. I can think of nothing worse than having some type of process, so you got sodium vapor, LED, sodium vapor, and if there's a way to come at it from a systemic process so that you don't get that
And speaking
that
of the
mixture
co-op,
stuff.
the proposal here is to, sort of shutting them off, but as far as the transition to LED, the co-op, that's going to be the default fixture. As the fixtures fail, they'll be changing them out anyway. So again, there's no, as far as costs go, not counting dark sky and all that, but there's no advantage to the town to do any of the lights as far as conversion except for the high wattage ones. And again, the high wattage ones, it's a huge advantage. It's from $40 to $23 or something per month per fixture. So it's an immediate cost savings on the high wattage fixtures.
I would offer this as a suggestion that you also continue your dialogue with, I assume it's Bill Johnstone with the co-op.
Bill's been good.
Because quite frankly, if they do follow through, as they've outlined on their program, where if there's a fixture goes bad, they're going to replace it. If you've got a street, typically that street, the typical age on all those fixtures, it could be a cost savings for the co-op in terms of labor. If one goes bad, just to ask the question, should they do a cursory review of the age of all the others and just change them all out at one time? That reduces the trip cost associated with it.
They're putting together a list for determining the age of the fixture. Again, that's important for us because anything over 5 years, there won't be a cost for removal or as conversion, obviously. But anything below 5 years, if we want to convert that to an LED, it's $470 a month. So.
Well, I also like the idea, if we're able to, when we are able to complete this, I think it'll be another feather in the cap for Plymouth from an energy efficiency standpoint, to be able to demonstrate how you make use of that new technology. There's several cities around the country already that have made great strides, and they're showcases for what downtown lighting looks like using LED technology. It'd be nice if Plymouth could be the one for the state. I know that from the standpoint of cutoff fixtures, Waterville Valley is the showcase for the state for that.
Sure.
Every light in that town is a cutoff fixture. It would be nice for us to have cutoff LEDs. I've been doing all the yada yada.
You have.
And you're doing a good job of it.
You're knowledgeable.
There's some specific things on that stuff that I don't know if they want to be addressed here, but
Maybe through the safety committee, we can start there, try to whittle that list down. As you saw from that back, there were some, of the memo, there were some questions to you.
Charlie, anything you wanted to tag on?
Yeah.
Paul?
And there's a university representative on the safety committee,
Yes.
so that'll give us an opportunity to talk
I think the
about,
university chair.
No, they're going to have to pick another person.
oh, Tammy's leaving.
Tammy's
Okay.
leaving.
Right.
Tammy has left.
Oh, she has, okay.
I'm sure they'll get a replacement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No additional questions, you sure?
You're good.
All right, so we'll get started with the safety committee, we'll work on this, and we'll share things through Paul again and be back here as soon as possible.
Be nice to see you in December sometime.
It'll be your early Christmas gift.
What about, so we're not going with a public input yet?
No, not until you work with the safety committee.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to other business. The next item is discuss the fee and usage of the vendor spot. We've received information, we being the select board, that there are questions and concerns that a number of our citizens and businesses have about what has been transpiring for the last couple of Thursday nights right in front of Town Hall. And as I thought through what's the most appropriate way to do that is rather for the select board to jump in, was to ask the input from those in the audience to hear from you your concerns and your interests and what your expectations are of the select board to look into this matter. So with that, while this is not a public hearing, this is a public information meeting in regards to that, I will open it up for input from those who are in attendance. And Charlie?
I recuse myself because I have an interest in one building that has a restaurant in it and family interest in another. So I'll sit in the audience and do my thing there. I want to sit next to Martha. It's safer.
And again, to help us out as you stand to address us, if you again would introduce yourself, and I'm assuming it's everybody here is from the town of Plymouth, but if you would just reaffirm that for us, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. And I'll just shake hands as I see a hand go up. Patty.
Patty Berman, I am a Plymouth taxpayer. I guess my question is to the board about approving the permit to let the burrito truck be out there on Thursday nights for however long, I think it's 10 more weeks, where they pay for a permit, but they don't contribute anything else to the town. I own the Lucky Dog Tavern and Grill and the Underdog Catering event space, which I pay rooms and meals tax on and property taxes on. I also have an interest in 2 other restaurants in town, Thai Smile and Late Night Pizza, which I pay property taxes on. The rooms and meals tax that I collect over $100,000 a year, which a portion of that goes back to the town. And I guess I just have an issue with somebody coming into town and selling things at a discount rate that I can't compete with. And it's not even a question of the burrito truck, it could be anybody. But basically, when somebody comes into town and they don't have the overhead that I have, they can come into town and sell things at a discount rate. I have to pay property taxes, I have to pay, whether it be rent or it might be a mortgage. I have utilities, I have payroll. I can't compete with that. And again, it's not about the truck, it's about that there are no rules or ordinances governing what can be let into town. I mean, from what I understand, my parking lot on Main Street, I could sublet that out to any vendor truck. I could have a huge blow-up ski and skate sale, you know, and take business away from Plymouth. I could have a flower truck come in or an ice cream truck. In any way, it takes away from the local town people that cannot compete with these. I would never do that because as a local business owner, I'm trying to preserve my business. And one of the best things about living in Plymouth and in this community is that everybody supports the local businesses. That's why we have Shop Local. That's why we have Bobcat cards. We encourage the money to stay locally. And not having anything to govern what can come into town is going to impact your businesses. Whereas our local town people can't compete with these, you're going to have empty storefronts if we allow these to come in. So I'm asking you to really take a look at what you can do to stop this from happening. Obviously, the burrito truck is here for 10 weeks. That's a moot point. But what can we do to stop this from happening in the future?
One thing I failed to point out is, for the most part, you may find that we're just listening this evening to make sure we understand all of the issues and your expectations. So you may not have some immediate feedback from us tonight on those things that you speak to us about. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Heidi Galicchio. I'm a Plymouth taxpayer and local resident. I used to own a business here in Plymouth. I owned a restaurant. And this is kind of like a deja vu for me because I want to say it was about 16 or 17 years ago. I was and had issues dealing with the same issue. There was a we called it the Roach Coach, I don't know what its actual name was, but it would roll up in that spot. And they were there every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, and they were selling all kinds of food items. And I brought it before the town at that point in time and said, why are we allowing this to happen? You have several issues at hand. You have all of the businesses who own and operate restaurants in this town are required to have a commercial kitchen license. They're governed strictly by food safety regulations. They're governed by the types of products that they can sell. There's a whole, I don't have to go into that, you know what that is. So then the question becomes, who's going to police something like that? Are you going to go out there and check their food license to make sure it's current? And how is that policed? In addition to that, one of the things that resulted from my crusade at that time was the majority of the business owners on Main Street had filed a petition with the town that we were very opposed to any kind of vendors coming in there, primarily because it takes away business from the local community. But a bigger issue is we pride ourselves on being a downtown Main Street USA community. So you have to ask yourself, if you're going to say to Walmart, you can't have your traditional Walmart blue logos. The sign can't be the same size that Walmart signage usually is. We want you to have it fit into our town parameters. It has to be smaller, it has to be green, because we pride ourselves in Plymouth on aesthetics and on our local, our town curb appeal, if you will. So then you have to ask yourself, what kind of an aesthetic is that to have a Meals on Wheels truck pulling up onto Main Street? Does it fit with what we pride ourselves on as a community? As a citizen, personally, with no vested interest in the restaurant business, I don't own any restaurants anymore, thank God. I think it looks trashy. And that's a really nice truck. I have seen it. I scoped it out because I wanted to know what I was talking about. Even as nice as the truck is, it's a food truck, and it's parked in our local downtown common, which has a very New England quaint local appeal, and we're allowing a truck like that to come in. The other issue is you have a snowball effect. When you allow something like that to come in, you are inviting other vendors who say, hey, that's a great idea. Well, guess what? Plymouth doesn't have any zoning regulations on vendors. I've seen in the past few weeks alone, there was a lady selling puppies at the turnaround by the Rotary. There was a guy parked in the parking lot across the street where the little mobile home guy is there selling flowers. There's somebody else selling seafood another time. So you start to open yourself up to all these other businesses, and every time somebody sells a dozen roses for $5.99 out of one of those backs of a pickup truck, that's business that's being taken away from your downtown florist. That's seafood that's being taken away from the seafood center, and so on and so forth. So it becomes a snowball effect. And then again, the safety issues. When I did drive through last Thursday to scope out this truck, two kids, I call them kids, two young adults, ran out from in front of the truck without looking. There's no crosswalk there. And then as they walked across to the commons, deposited their trash on the ground in the commons. So you also have the issue of safety and where's the trash going and all that. And then the last part of it was, when I went through this before, what the end result was, and I don't know if there's anything to document this, the end result was that we didn't approve of having vendor spots. Those spots were created for town taxi and was rented, I believe it was like $50 a month to the town taxi service. And then there was Puppy Love Hot Dogs, which was in front of where Biederman's is. When Puppy Love went out, they were no longer grandfathered as a vendor. That spot went away, no longer a vendor spot, which left us with the town taxi spot and the bus, where the bus drops off. And those were really intended for the purpose of taxi. So over the course of the years, I haven't been on top of it. I don't know what happened with that. But the original intent when those spots were created was for that purpose, not for food service vehicles to come in and sublet it from another business in town. So as a tax-paying resident, I'm opposed to having that based on those reasons. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the select board?
Sharon Berman, I'm a resident of Plymouth as well. are we getting for those spots for rent on an annual basis?
My understanding, by checking, is that, yeah, it's $500
500 each or 500 for the 2 spots?
total.
Wait, what 2 spots?
How is this rate determined?
It's something that we are looking into. As I indicate, you can pose all your questions tonight, but we'd like to make sure we understand everything before we get back.
I'm just wondering, like, you know, I would love to rent spots in front of my business for $250 a year. You know, I mean, I don't think there's any business in town that would jump at that chance, because then you could determine how those spots are used and create a competitive advantage. When the town maintains those spots, the town plows those spots, the town stripes those spots. I mean, I'm sure we spend $250 a year just maintaining each of those spots. You know, we probably get, you know, I don't know how much we get if we just metered them between parking fines for people not paying the meter and the meter revenues that you collect. I'm sure it would be more than the $250 that we get per spot. You know, and now they can sublet them for other vendors and do whatever they want with them. That just seems unfair. You know.
We'll make sure we look into that. Yes, please.
Well, right now I wish I wasn't a Berman, because what my experience was totally, I wasn't even thinking of any of these things, but I was at a board meeting for the Friends of the Arts at the Silver Center the first night that thing was there. And we came out and I saw this thing with food and I was like, that looks awful. I mean, it's right in front of Town Hall, and beautiful New England town they were so proud of, and it looked terrible. And I didn't relate it at all to the children and their businesses and what it was doing. And I just related it to my own personal, I didn't like the looks of it. And I thought it's demeaning for us to have something like that there. And one other thing I'm not sure has been mentioned is that that truck does pay taxes, but they pay it to wherever that truck lives. We don't get anything for it, and that doesn't seem right. That some town, we don't even know what it is reaping the benefits of this truck that's messing up our downtown.
Yes, in the back.
Yeah, I want to clarify something. That parking spot is $500, not 2 parking spots for $250 each. I'm the current renter of that parking spot. I'm the owner of Plymouth Sports. I have been renting this spot for the last 14 years. Whenever we have a problem, when someone approached me to ask for sublet, he came to town, I asked if it was legal. He told me yes. We proceed. I only provide the space. The town give the permit. The only thing I want to say, I was hearing that it's $250, no, it's $500 a year for that. In my case, I use that parking spot payments a year. The rest, I pay to the town for something I'm not.
I didn't catch your name on the front.
Daniel Masira.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the Select Board this evening? Well, we will certainly take this matter under advisement, and we will be just taking the facts that you've shared with us this evening, and I'm sure that you'll hear the outcome of that. I can't promise by the next Select Board meeting, but certainly very shortly, as to what the future course of action should be when similar requests are made. Yes, ma'am.
I might also suggest for the future that we look into, depending on what the outcome is with this, that we maybe consider some different zoning options so that we don't encounter this. Like I said, that we've already been in this room once before, and here we are talking about it again. So obviously that's a gap in zoning that needs to be addressed.
I'll ask once again, anyone else wishing to speak?
Yeah, again,
please.
Called me today, offered me not to come back here because they really don't want to make any problem in town, and they are willing not to come back again. They have, I think they have 8 more weeks. They stay here 2 hours, no more than that. and they feel that I'm in trouble because I allowed them to park there. And they called me today and they said it's such an issue for the town where we are not to come. They are going to every single town around us. They apparently have no problem, only here. I want to say that because they are good guys, but they encounter unexpected problems, and I understand many of the issues here, and I want to clarify that.
Thank you, sir. Not seeing anyone else, I'm going to move on to the next subject. And thank you for coming this evening. The next item is from our fire chief to accept a bid and sale of one of our retired fire trucks. Sino, if you'd like to come forward, please.
Chief? As you received, this is the old aerial ladder truck that did not pass the test. It's out of spec. So we replaced it, and for about over a year now it's been sitting down. Once down by the highway garage. We moved it for fear of damage due to vandalism. It is currently now up on another piece of property that the town owns. Through the efforts of myself, the highway superintendent, and I believe the town administrator, we've been putting the word out. Some places I tried to put the word out, you had to put a dollar figure with it, and we didn't feel comfortable putting a dollar figure with it. Other areas I've checked with locally, Mr. Getton seems to buy a lot of old retired fire apparatus, and he sells it, and he puts a dump body on them, and he sells it. When asked if he would like to throw a dollar figure at me to purchase this, he laughed and walked away. The truck is it's a one-time use vehicle. The axle rating for the weight in the back and the length of it, it's really not that conducive to do anything with it. Somebody probably could take it and chop and channel, but they're not going to give us very much money. A captain out of Rumney Fire Department has a contact with a marina, a guy that runs a marina. He replaces and restores boats. That's got a Detroit motor in it. It's not hurt. It's a very good motor. But he said with the economy, he's not rebuilding a lot of boats, so he wasn't even going to entertain possibly purchasing the vehicle for the motor itself. Mm-hmm. So I was approached by another person that he had a friend that collects old fire trucks. He came, took a look at it. Once he found out that there was no pump, no tank, really it's just it's a one-use vehicle. It's a straight stick, very light duty, nothing that a collector was interested in. He asked what it was going for, and I looked at him and said, I'm going to say we're asking $8,000 for it, but definitely come back with a counter. And I didn't hear anything back from that gentleman. And then lately, this gentleman here, he contacted me. He says he does occasionally buy and sell old equipment. He understands what it's worth. He's bought them quite frequently, as he indicated. I asked him to make us an offer, put it in writing, and I was going to forward it to the board, and we're here. So as far as I know, this is, after a year, this is the only money. We probably could have spent that in advertising. I got nothing. So when we purchased the new truck, when I was down to Florida, I did talk to the president down there about seeing if we could get anything for it in trade. And he shook his head and he says, I got one that we took a while ago, and they're no good. He says, I hate to say it, but they wind up in a field rotting down to nothing. So the longer it sits, the less and less attractive anybody's going to,
So, do you want to buy it, chief?
I do not want that.
Questions for the chief, other than the one already posed? Anything, Dick?
No.
No.
I don't know what you call it other than a white elephant, but
Been sitting now for about a year.
I move it costs to fix this thing up and
Accept the
About
bid.
200,000.
There's a motion to accept the bid. Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion on the proposal to accept the bid? I'll just offer up that my view is probably wait another year, and the only thing that might happen is the number might go down further.
probably.
I'll call for a vote on the proposal to accept the bid for $3,500 for the sale of the former ladder truck. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's make it happen.
Make them come and get it.
Damage.
Work with Paul on a bill of sale, because I definitely talked to the individual about if in fact this offer was accepted to get the door seals off, that he would do that and give us some type of documentation that that is done. We definitely don't want the truck out there with our logo on it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll work with Paul on that.
Please.
Okay?
Great.
Because
Thank
this
you,
is your
Chief.
copy, so. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
The next item on our agenda is one that Mike has put a draft proposal in front of us to follow through on a discussion in regards to seeking some outside support, including financial help, for the intersection of Highland Street and Tenny Mountain Highway. I don't know if you want to amplify anything in your draft letter or not.
Yes. I have been, as most everybody knows, I've been talking to Mike McGinley off and on. He's the guy that owns what we refer to sometimes as the cornfield. And it turns out that in order for that and probably any other development to occur down on Tenny Mountain Highway, it's going to be necessary to upgrade the lights there. And there may be an opportunity for the state to provide some money for that project through its so-called state aid program. And in order for that to happen, the town would probably want to indicate to the Department of Transportation that we saw the need for that improvement to be done in order for the development to occur down on Tenny Mountain generally. And so I have drafted a proposed letter to a guy named William Watson, who's the administrator of the Bureau of Planning and Community Assistance at the Department of Transportation, setting forth essentially what I just said, and which I would like to sign myself and would like to have other members of the board sign if they're so inclined. And if you'd like, I could read it, actually. Would that be appropriate or not? I guess I'm on TV and I said it, so I might as well read it.
I would suggest that for the audience, it would be helpful for them to get the content of what we're going to discuss.
So this is a letter addressed to the individual I just identified at DOT, and it says, "We're writing to you concerning the improvements which will need to be made on the traffic control lights at the referenced intersection, which is Highland and Tenny, prior to the occurrence of further development in the immediate area. The Select Board, subject to the requirements of the town's planning, zoning, and any other regulatory authorities, is supportive of the prospects for development in the Tenny Mountain area. Although the precipitating factor in the discussion of lighting improvements in this area appears to relate to proposed development on the north side of the intersection, we are all aware that development has occurred and is likely to continue on Tenny Mountain Highway generally, especially to the west of the referenced intersection. This, in conjunction with the proposed extension of Highland Street across Tenny Mountain Highway, will place added pressure on the Tenny-Highland intersection. We agree with the state that there is a need for improvements to the lighting at this intersection. We are aware that the state aid program may provide matching funds in appropriate circumstances for the benefit of municipalities facing the need for improvements such as those suggested for this intersection.
The Town of Plymouth Selectboard is supportive of the completion of these improvements and would welcome an opportunity to apply for matching funds under the state aid program. Notwithstanding our support of the project, we anticipate that the town would not accept state aid funding until that the town would not accept state aid funding until or unless it had received a commitment for a contribution of the town's share of the cost from others. We would appreciate any assistance you may be able to provide in facilitating further consideration of this possibility within DOT. Thanks for your assistance, and we look forward to discussing this matter with you. That's it.
I'll jump in. Looking at the letter, if I get to about the fourth line down, it says, although the precipitating factor in the discussion of lighting, is your understanding that we're talking about street lighting, as we were just discussing, or traffic control?
Traffic control lights.
I think it would be helpful to specify that. Also, reflecting on the work that was approved back in 2000, and the year accepts me now, but with the proposed then Lowe's project, there were two considerations for that intersection. It was definitely determined by the State Highway Department that that intersection needed to be reworked to control traffic. And there were two alternatives that were on the table. One was to establish a roundabout, which would have cost less than the installation of new traffic control lighting and the redesign of that intersection. At the time, the idea of roundabout was a subject that was still being explored both for the downtown area of Plymouth and also at a number of locations along Tenny Mountain Highway. And there was a fair amount of apprehension by a number of businesses along Tenny Mountain Highway as to the potential for negative impacts as a result of the then perceived or proposed divided highway along Tenny Mountain Highway that was going to accompany the roundabouts both at Highland Street, Smith Mountain, and quite frankly one that just was placed with traffic control lights as you go up to Boulder Point. Those were three roundabout locations that were identified in a 2001 long-range traffic study. But as I look at this, I wonder if we wouldn't be well suited to now ask the question, because some of those businesses on Tenny Mountain Highway that were apprehensive about roundabouts have now come full circle. They have seen the benefits for what occurred here in downtown Plymouth, and they also have businesses elsewhere where they've seen roundabouts go in, such as the one over in Meredith. And most recently, the most that was in this weekend's paper, the access road to the airport in Manchester. There's two major roundabouts that are part of that, and those are high-speed roundabouts that the state has put in. So there is about a number of 6 or 7 years now of additional experience and understanding of the value of a roundabout and the economics of a roundabout. I wonder if we wouldn't be well suited to indicate in here so that whatever's done for traffic control, not just lighting, but making generic. My belief is that if we were to reintroduce that subject today, and some of the businesses, and I'll be specific, Harris Furniture is one of them that understands now that
maybe that's
it's not the negative impact that they were believed that was going to occur back then. That we perhaps ought to re-explore the subject of roundabouts, especially since it's more economical, and that means if we're going to step up to the plate to help, it's less money for the town also. I don't know how to weave that into your letter, though. Taking all that yada yada I just set aside, with that one change of traffic control lighting, maybe that's all that's needed to jumpstart this discussion and not get the other, not go down the other path just yet. I like the idea of putting it on the table.
There is a reference to lights in the second line.
Yeah, traffic control lights, yeah. If we just said in a discussion of traffic control lighting again,
that would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I would support kicking the letter off, but I also think it's imperative that we also have a revisit of that subject of roundabouts, so that we don't end up with a bunch of street lights up and down. the traffic engineers that had met in this room at the very last public hearing that was held, when it was point blank asked by the chairman of the select board at that time what he would recommend for Tenny Mountain Highway, he said roundabouts. Yet the political decision was to go with streetlights out of fear because of all of the input that we were getting from businesses along Tenny Mountain Highway, out of a lack of knowledge. There just wasn't any experience.
Right. Yeah, well, that's an interesting thought. DOT do studies on the design, would they do that as part of this exercise?
That one there at Highland's already been done. That's on paper.
Yes?
By DOT. They worked with the engineer architect for Lowe's. That one's done. The one for Smith Mountain, too.
The one that we're talking about here has been done? Is that right? Is there... I think looking at a roundabout is a good idea. I think it's appropriate, given, as Ray said, the attitude of people in this town's changed since the one on Main Street.
Because there was so much apprehension, I think we would be well served to not be presumptuous on all of our beliefs, but to open it one more time. But the fact that we know it costs less now.
What if I just change this enough to refer to, lights or, or just traffic control measures?
Just there you go. Yeah, just take the word lighting out and put measures.
And then...
In the alternative...
See if they come back with a recommendation.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would they make a recommendation, or are they just... Well, this particular individual is Bureau of Planning and Community Assistance. I don't think he's an engineer or one who would recommend one way or the other necessarily. I don't know. If he's planning, he might have some...
I think it would be helpful just to get the process started.
Okay. I will amend this.
Because the developer, and the reason you're being approached, is Lowe's was going to pay for everything on that intersection.
Yeah.
And the one at Smith Mountain. They were going to pay for both.
Wow.
That was their condition for getting the site plan approved. So, the fact that it's out there now, I think your letter's great. If you just make that one change, I'll support it.
Yeah, I thought the letter that I reviewed earlier was good, and I think these changes are excellent. I think getting the idea of the roundabout out there would be a positive thing.
Good. All right, so I'll redo this and send it back up to Paul, and it'll be in the folder, I guess, whatever Paul does with it. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Any unfinished business? Yes, sir.
Ray, we have two things. Going back to the survey for Time Warner, the survey will be due on the 21st, not the 28th. On the 28th at 6:30 at your regular meeting, there's going to be a public hearing that's going to include the results of the survey.
Okay.
So that's on that one. And also on High Street, the board had entertained a group of citizens that wrote a petition about the do not enter signs.
Oh, yeah.
And the next step is the board has just requested that we send a survey out to the people on High Street, Emerson Street, and any other street that we feel is affected by those signs. Basically, are you in favor of the signs, are you not in favor of the signs, or do you not care one way or the other?
I'm sorry, did you say that we asked that you do that?
Yeah, that was one of the...
I didn't remember that, I'm
So
sorry.
we had to wait for the safety committee.
Right,
to
I was
meet.
gonna...
So coming out of the safety committee, I should say the safety committee.
Okay. So the safety committee requested that...
But there wasn't a definite answer on what to do after the safety committee met with the neighbors in that vicinity. It's a...
Things like we'd be well served just to identify those who are potentially impacted and just ask the question for a couple of stamps to see what we hear back.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Very good idea.
I should say the Board of Selectmen met with a subcommittee
Right.
attached to the
Yeah,
safety committee.
okay,
Requested that I put out a survey. So we started that survey today. We will mail the survey out to those people in the neighborhoods that are impacted by those signs.
Okay, good.
But for the time being, those that are seeing the signs are down. They're basically just down because we just can't keep them up. They continue to come down within 24 hours.
That may be our answer right there. Just ignore it, it'll go away.
Anything else, sir?
That's it.
At this point in our agenda, I open it up for public comments. Is there anyone wishing to address the Select Board? Yes, ma'am.
First, I'd like to thank the board for considering a Saturday town meeting. However, I think the time is not going to be, like, a big part of the puzzle was for the elderly people. They didn't want to come out at night or in the dark, and I haven't heard of anybody doing a Saturday town meeting at night. So I had thought of in the morning, and just curious as why you chose 7 o'clock at night.
Well,
Babysitters and,
the thing was that a number of people within our town still work. And the belief was if we held it during the daylight hours, even on a Saturday, we were going to create a burden for those people still working. That was the thought.
But I guess my thought is the elderly people and the people that don't like to go out at night. And I would invite the board during tax time to come in and listen to them all. And stay there for a few hours and as they come in and pay and listen to their comments. At any point, you're more than welcome to come in. But I would like you to relook at the time on it Saturday. I think that they could benefit by having food sales. You could have babysitting service, you know, there's other things that can be done. You're always going to find somebody that works, whether it's Saturday night, Saturday morning, you're always going to get that.
We'll certainly take your request under consideration.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
John, all right, brother. I commend you on the way you handled the petition article in regards to town meeting on Saturday. But for a long time, I've always wondered why selectmen were called politicians, and now I know, because you followed the petition to the letter of the law without giving the citizens anything. And I think that's a good politician. The main thrust of this whole thing is you didn't have to go out at night. I personally know from the age that I am that Friday night, when it was raining and lights were on, cars were coming, I was in danger of having an accident when I drove down the street. I also know that after 10 o'clock at night, 90% of the people get zoned out and they don't have the ambition or the will to stay there for a lot of articles that are being passed and many of them many articles. One thing I would suggest is maybe some type of not a letter, but just a small piece of paper, because again, this is at night, and so the older people are not coming out at night. And the majority of the population in the United States is going to be older people instead of younger people, so you have to take that into consideration. And the thing is that as far as people working, they will come to the town meeting. They really have to. Again, if you could take a small piece of paper and say, what are your thoughts on a Saturday town meeting, what it would be tax bill, and send it out, at least they would get all of the property tax on it, and they could bring the tax bill in, or when they send it back in, they could include this little piece of paper. I'm sure you'd be surprised at the outcome of that compared to the outcome.
If I could ask each of you two for just a personal feeling on the subject, if we were going to hold it during the day, what time of day would you suggest?
9 a.m. on Saturday.
Is that time frame you would have in mind too, John?
Sure. Many towns really make a holiday of it. They have food sales. They actually, a lot of towns, I found out, have babysitting services so people can come and visit and, play in the yard or play on whatever it is. So there's ways around it. And the other thing that I think has got to happen is it cannot be done for 1 year. And so, well, we tried it. It's all over. Didn't work. There was one town locally, I'm not too sure of the name of the town, but they tried that 1 year. And they took their hands and they said, well, I guess we don't need that. And it came back that the people wanted to keep it on for 2 to 3 years, so that it would settle in and they could go on and see how it really did work instead of just appeasing the people without doing anything, which I think this decision to try to sacramento was concerned.
Lady Macy had her hand up also. Give her a chance first.
Well, I thought the main reason of having the town meeting moved to a Saturday was so you have it during daylight hours. And I, for one, being a senior citizen, I do not drive at night. I'm kind of white knuckled to come to this meeting tonight. And many of my friends are the same way. They do not drive at night. So I would prefer, I know it's nice to have a Saturday evening, or Saturday meeting, but I would like it during the daytime. And many of my friends who are also senior citizens feel the same way.
Thank you. John, the lady in front of you first, okay, let her go.
I really think that probably if you had it on a Saturday, I didn't come to that point yet, but I think the buses of the senior citizens would bring up a tremendous amount of people that wouldn't come out at night, which is that don't want to drive at night. I still do. Many people probably think I live, but I still do. But the buses could be used to bring some of the citizens that couldn't possibly attend any other way.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for waiting.
Mine would be for the warrant articles also. If there's a lot of them and they have to be open for an hour, a Saturday night could still get into like midnight and then you're going into Sunday. So I just think that during the day on Saturday would be better.
Well, one of the things that did enter into our discussions was, depending on what time you start and everything, if you're working during the day, you're going to run into a meal period. So, it's a catch-22 no matter what we do here, huh?
Some people don't eat till 7 at night and you start it, so. I think for the senior citizens of the town that we owe it to them to at least fight for a couple of years to give them a chance to come out.
Anyone else wishing to address? I'll close the public comment section. And at this point, I'll entertain a motion that we go back into non-public session in regard to, in accordance with RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, A through C. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Dick and seconded by Mike that we go back into non-public in accordance with the RSA. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are unanimous.